Well, see if he's there, will you? James, where on earth have you been?
Hey everybody! If you know me, you probably know that I'm a big fan of the Bond movies, especially the older ones. And I just happen to have read my very first James Bond novel, Dr. No by Ian Fleming. Ian Fleming, the inventor of James Bond. Many people nowadays are apparently not aware of the fact that James Bond started out as a series of books and not as a series of movies. And Dr. No was turned into the first Bond movie. It was not the first Bond book, but it was the first Bond movie. Again, so I read this book just recently, I just watched the movie, and how do these two compare? The book was decent. It had some really fun and enjoyable parts and some kind of bland and tedious parts. The writing was a bit stiff, and there are some hints of racism towards Jamaicans and Chinese people, so it's somewhat dated in that regard. Nonetheless, it's okay if you're a fan. I would probably not recommend it if you're used to more modern spy thrillers or thriller fare. But it's okay if you want to dive into the time when it was written, which was the late 50s. It's a serial novel, so it's not something outstanding. It's decent and fun. Yeah, that's for sure.
I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Mr. Bond, I suppose you wouldn't care to raise the limit?
I have no objections.
So, how's the movie, you're asking? As I said before, it's the first Bond movie, it's not the first Bond book. The story of the film focuses on Bond. He has to go to Jamaica to investigate the disappearance of a British agent, and as it turns out, as you see in the opening scene, this guy got killed. He got assassinated. So Bond has to investigate, he has to figure out what just happened, and his investigations eventually lead him to Crab Key, which is this little island. And this little island happens to be the place of the lair of the mysterious Dr. No, who's the mad supervillain in this story. And if you know your Bond movies or your Bond stories, you probably know where this will end up.
Hello? Oh, Mr. Bond. I was thinking, why don't you collect me at my apartment?
So, although it is the first Bond movie, there are already all the major parts of a Bond movie in there. Things that you see in all the other movies in the series, all the other 24, I think, or 25, I'm not entirely sure, so don't hate on me if I don't get it exactly right. So you have Bond, who's this very suave character. He has his Walther PPK, which he gets at the beginning instead of a Beretta. He like gets rid of his Beretta gun and gets a Walther PPK. You have the Bond girl. In this case, she's played by Ursula Andress, and her name in the movie is Honey Rider. You have exotic locations. In this case, that would be Jamaica. You have the mad supervillain, who's Dr. No. You have some action showpieces. Again, the movie is from 1962, so don't expect anything along the lines of Skyfall or the chase sequences in Casino Royale, or even the tank sequence in Moscow in GoldenEye from '95. This movie was made in the 60s, so it's nothing grand by nowadays standards, but back in the days it was really awesome, and it's still fun and enjoyable to watch nowadays. One part that I really like about this film, and about the older Bonds especially, is Sean Connery in a title role of James Bond. He's, in my humble opinion, probably the best of the Bond actors. It's debatable, it's probably a somewhat controversial choice, especially in that nowadays everybody seems to love Daniel Craig, but I personally rather stick to the old originals, and only time will tell if Daniel Craig ends up being better or more watchable than Sean Connery. But Sean Connery just has this some kind of watchability to himself, and I really enjoy that. Yeah, I do. Apart from the story and Sean Connery in a title role, who's really awesome to watch, I really enjoy the technical side as well. So there's this beautiful cinematography, which is not outstanding, but it's very nice to look at. We have the classical Bond theme already in place, so that's guaranteed for. And there's some decent direction by Terrence Young. And I personally don't see these films as a work of art, and they probably were never intended at the time they were made as works of art. They are perfect examples of great craftsmanship. They are just made to be enjoyed. It's not nowadays that, like with Skyfall, that they hired a really high-profile director like Sam Mendes, who's made American Beauty and Revolutionary Road, and who comes from a theater background. It's more just for pure joy to watch, and it really accomplishes that. And Dr. No and all the other old movies like Goldfinger or From Russia with Love, they are great for repeat viewings, and they're a perfect time capsule, and I couldn't recommend them higher. They are really, really great. And Dr. No is a great example of a classic James Bond movie, and I really like it.